So my name is Melanie, and I'm a product designer at Facebook, where I design digital products for our community integrity team. I'm also a designer of color. And I'm also the founder of Front and Center, a coaching program for underrepresented talent in design. Where over the last 4 years, I've worked with both startup founders and design leaders on how they can develop effective recruitment strategies to attract underrepresented design talent, but also what they can do to cultivate a more inclusive design space for designers like myself, AKA Retain Us. In addition to this, I've also invested over 500 hours personally coaching underrepresented design talent on 3 key areas. The first one is how to gain the necessary experience to build an effective design portfolio. 2, I also coach them on how to really navigate the design and tech interview process in such a way where you actually hit that goal of getting your job. And lastly, how they can advocate for their needs as designers in large tech companies. And so today, I'm super pumped to share with you guys 5 tips that I've developed over the last 4 years for design leaders on what you guys can do to create a more inclusive workspace, one where people of color can truly thrive in. And so let's get into it. Okay, so one of the stories I want to share with you today is how privilege shows up in our practice as designers. So in design, we know that it's very common for us to ask questions. And in fact, a large part of our job is actually asking questions. And so for some people, this skill comes natural to them, right? But what if you grew up in an environment that never really fostered that sort of skill? What if you were discouraged from a young age from asking these critical questions and possibly even get in trouble? And so for me, growing up in a community of color, my mother worked 3 jobs, and she was constantly rushing from one job to the next. And so my brothers and I just really learned to kind of stay out her way and never really ask questions because we didn't want to inconvenience her. And so we grew up never really truly feeling comfortable asking questions, right? So you get where I'm going with this? I work as a designer in tech. I'm supposed to ask questions, but I don't really feel comfortable asking questions. And so at Front and Center, one of the first things I do when I coach any designer of color is you gotta get comfortable asking questions. And I teach them and I tell them, hey, you gotta take this as an opportunity for you to learn from your peers and your manager. So reframe it from like, hey, I'm being seen as annoying to really like, no, this is an opportunity for you to learn from your peers around you. And so the first tip I have for managers is you can build trust faster in designers of color by just creating space for real talk to happen. And in this space, this is one where different perspectives, points of views are encouraged, and your designers truly feel comfortable to share with you and their peers what they're thinking openly and freely without fearing judgment from our peers or our leaders. And speaking of real talk, okay. So what if I told you, the design leaders and managers in this room, that you can cultivate community quicker by leveraging your own weaknesses and failures to inspire us to open up and share about our areas of growth and improvement? So despite knowing that our managers are there to have our back and to coach us and to support us, for some designers of color, we can truly have a difficult time just kind of opening up and sharing our areas of growth with you. And the reason for that is, one, the reason for that is primarily because we've been coached. We live in a society where people of color have to work twice as hard to get just as far, to get half as far as our peers. And so the idea of opening up and sharing with others our own areas of improvements and weaknesses is just something you don't do. Like, you just don't tell people your business. But as managers, that's what you want your designers to do. You want them to open up. You want them to share with you. But what happens when there's a resistance there, and how do we work through that? And so my tip here for managers is, listen, be really vulnerable about your careers. Be transparent about your success. Remind us that your path to success wasn't a linear one. It's one that was full of ups and downs. And when you do that, you inspire us to feel comfortable to honestly share with you where our own areas of our improvements are. Thus, we get in this dialogue where we truly engage in a meaningful exchange where we're both helping each other. And so share openly and honestly about your improvements to gain our trust, to gain our respect, but also to inspire us to talk about the things that we're not so good at that you can help us be better at. Okay, so my next point is, this is another thing to keep in mind. As a person of color, in spaces where we're not seen, where we're not truly represented, we feel uncomfortable all day long, and all we want is validation and acceptance amongst our peers. And because we feel uncomfortable, it's really hard for us to advocate for our needs, to ask for additional resources or guidance or coaching. And so we kind of clam up and we stick to our one-on-ones with our managers to just project status, things that are going well, what's coming down the pipeline, generally good things. And we never really tell you about how you can best move how to best coach us so that we can move the work forward. And so one of the many, many lessons I've learned while coaching designers of color over the years is always to start by listening. Do not assume that everyone has had the same access, the same opportunities, or experience coming into design. And this is especially true for designers of color who break into tech and design through unconventional pathways. So really make the time to listen, to get to know us, to learn our stories. Because you want to know what? We're not always looking for your solutions. We're looking for validations. We're looking to be heard, to be seen, and to feel like we belong. In addition to feeling different all day, we also notice when we're the only person of color in the room. We just don't tell you guys that. And when we don't see each other, and when we are the only person in the room, and that is also not reflected in design leadership, it makes it incredibly hard for us to visualize that for ourselves in our own careers. And this is why role models are critical. The only way you're going to increase representation in design and technology is by ensuring that people of color truly make it into leadership. It's not enough to get us in the door and keep us, but we also have to do the work there as members of an inclusive workspace. And so managers, what can you do? So there's a couple of things you can do here. You can help to build our confidence and our sense of belonging by publicly acknowledging our unique strengths and skills and the contribution and values that we bring to both your teams and your company. Because when you do this, when you truly do this, only then will you truly tap into our creative power and help to set us free. Because for a lot of time, we're just holding back our talent. We're waiting for validation. We're waiting for people to tell us that they want to hear from us. And finally, being an ally. Oh, my favorite word, be the ally. Be an ally, what does that mean? It means to listen and to act with and for others to create a more inclusive space. And for some designers of color, it is really hard to find these allies. I don't know if you have my best interests or not. I can assume that, but I'm not sure if that's what that really is. And so one thing that managers have at their disposals that we just don't is that you have the power to connect us to allies, to people who are going to support us and to continue to invest in our education, in our growth, in our professional goals. And by doing this, not only are you helping us to level up our skill set and grow our talents, but you're also connecting us to people that make us feel like we belong there and that our experience matter and are worth fighting for. And if you happen to be a designer of color in this room, and you happen to be the only designer at your company or on your team, and you're having trouble finding a community, try building one of your own. In many ways, Front and Center was a side hustle passion project that I worked on while I had a full-time job in building my design skills. And you know, all it took was me asking a bunch of folks over Twitter if they were interested in grabbing coffee with me to talk about some of these issues. And I discovered that I wasn't the only one that wanted to fix things. And my last thought that I want to share with you guys today before I have to pass on the stage is that my hope for every single design leader and person in this room who's currently managing a designer of color or who happens to find themselves managing one of us later on in the future is that may you always, always, always strive to ensure a psychological safety for everyone in your org, whether that be another design manager, another individual contributor. My hope is that you work from a place of inclusion to pull us in. Because when you do this, you will cultivate real empathy on your teams and you will be able to move your company one step closer to becoming the most inclusive workspace, while also ensuring that every single member of that organization, both the individual and the collective, is supported and ultimately lead to the collective growth and support of both your teams and your companies. And so to recap, you can do these 5 things to build a more inclusive culture, not just for designers of color, but for anyone who identifies as an outsider. So the first thing, build trust faster by creating space for real talk, where people can show up and tell you what they're thinking openly and freely without fearing judgment or criticism from our leaders or our peers. Second, lead through your vulnerabilities to inspire honest conversations. If you want us to open up and talk about our areas of growth, open up and share your areas of growth as well, so that we can help level the playing field. Make time to listen. Learn our stories. Learn how we got into design. Because for most of us, and for some of us, we've actually have broken into design through unconventional paths like myself. Fourth tip that I want to leave you guys is celebrate their unique strengths that they bring to your teams and company as a way to inspire careers for us. And lastly, connect us to allies, people that make us feel like we belong and that our experience matter and that they want to hear more from us. Because when you do all these things, you'll create a space where not just one person or a subset of group of people can thrive, but one where everyone can thrive. Because at the end of the day, we're all in this together and we're all trying to figure it out. Especially with the way the world is today, we can't have our workplace reflect that. And that's all I got for you. And so thank you so much for your attention. If you want to learn more about my coaching program, it's at frontandcenter.co. And if you want to connect with me, that's my Twitter handle. And that's it. Cool.